family and I took a week-long trip to Australia. We booked an Airbnb right on the Gold Coast, just across the street from the ocean. Along with my wife, my 7-year-old son, and my 5-year-old daughter, we packed our bags and flew out there. In order to drive while we were there, I had to get my international driving permit, so we rented a minivan for the week. For the first few days, it was honestly pretty confusing adjusting to driving on the left side of the road, but I eventually got the hang of it. The Airbnb had a balcony in the front which faced the ocean, and another balcony in the back that faced towards the neighboring houses on the street behind us. This made for a great view of the ocean, only being about half a football field's length away. It seemed like the perfect family vacation, but things took a really bad turn on the fourth night. Earlier that day, we had purchased tickets to go on a boat ride to go deep-sea fishing. However, my wife woke up that morning feeling sick, so we ended up canceling so she wouldn't miss out with us. We were all out in the backyard having a campfire when my kids started saying that they wanted to go to the beach. Up until that point, we'd only been there during the day, and the sun was already setting. We sat around for a bit longer, but after much nagging from my kids, I eventually caved in and took them. My wife still wasn't feeling good, so she went back inside the Airbnb while I walked them across the street to the ocean. I brought a lawn chair with me and plopped it down in the sand as I watched them run around and play by the water. Now, I'm really not exactly sure how much time passed, but I was eventually snapped out of my daze when I heard my daughter screaming at the top of her lungs. I looked over to see that she ventured a short distance away from me, and she was standing at the shoreline. I got up and ran over to her, as my son, who was a lot closer to where I was sitting, sort of stood there frozen. What I saw still gives me chills when I think about it. The body of a middle-aged woman had washed up on the shore. I grabbed my daughter and picked her up, listening to her scream and cry, while I tried my best to block my son from seeing the body. I didn't know what to say to calm her down, and thinking about it now, I still don't know what I even could have said. It was clear as day. Someone literally washed up on the shore, and my daughter found it. I ran back across the street with them and bursted through the front door, yelling for my wife to call the authorities. They eventually came and did their whole investigation, and after talking to us for what felt like hours, they left, leaving all of us in utter shock. After that, the rest of the week just felt off, and I don't think any of us slept good. On our final day there, I got on my computer to check for any updates on the body, because we still hadn't heard anything from the authorities. The first article that popped up was posted less than 24 hours ago, and it was disturbing to say the least. The woman was identified as a British native, who was vacationing with a friend. It was too early to rule anything out, but it was made clear that there was suspected foul play. It turns out, we were supposed to be on that boat with her. I'm not sure how many others there were, but that discovery in of itself was terrifying. I still don't know what to think about this, and I haven't been able to find any updates since. Had my wife not gotten sick that morning, we would have been there, and we either would have witnessed or fallen victim to whatever happened. Either way, I guess we lucked out not going on that boat, but it still bothers me to this day not knowing what happened. This story happened when I was a kid, so my mom helped me write this to remember all the details. I'm a guy, and about 11 years ago when I was 8 years old, I went on holiday to Australia to visit some relatives on my mom's side of the family, along with my mom, dad, brother, and his girlfriend at the time. They were in the rural parts of Victoria, and to give a basic summary of the area, they lived on a farm. The house was surrounded by various fields. When facing the house on the left side, there were 2 fields, and then at the far end of these fields, there was a highly wooded area with a dirt track running through it. My grandparents, who lived on the farm, would often go on nature rambles through the forest to spot the wildlife that lived there. My mother, being a dedicated bird spotter, decided to head off with me and my brother's girlfriend into the forest, as we both had a fascination with wildlife. We must have been walking along the dirt track for around 10 minutes, taking pictures of the various animals we'd seen, when we passed by a line of motorbikes and around 7 bikers having a barbecue. One of the bikers politely smiled at my mother, and she responded with a simple good evening. As we walked past them, one of the bikers approached us and asked where we were going. We told them, and they informed us that they had been camping in the area for around 2 nights. They told us to be careful, as people had been hunting in the forest. These people apparently had aggressive dogs, so we were told to be on the lookout. Around 15 minutes later, I spotted an old barn, which I dashed off to explore while my mother and Lisa observed a bird of some kind. I didn't tell them where I was going. As I approached the barn, I saw 3 large dogs tied up outside. They were Rottweilers, and they seemed incredibly aggressive. Luckily, they were chained up because they were barking and snarling a lot. I didn't think anything of it at the time. I assumed they were hunting, but looking back, Rottweilers aren't hunting dogs. There was also an old mattress on the floor outside, which appeared to be covered in brown stains that emanated a foul aroma. I was around 3 feet away from the mattress, but the smell was unbelievably powerful. As I was going to turn around back to the others, I saw a man emerging from the barn. The image of this man is one of the few things I remember clearly from this day. He was very tall, about 6'4", and was wearing a blue pinstripe suit. The strangest thing about him was that he was wearing a large top hat. His clothes seemed very worn, and the part of his face that wasn't covered by his large brown beard was red, as if he had just been working out on a hot day. I remember the man smiled and approached me. I asked him if he was a magician, to which he said, "No, I look after doggies. Do you like doggies?" I told him I did. This is when things started to get weird. He began to approach me and asked if I wanted to come inside and have my picture taken with the dogs. I politely refused and said my mom would be looking for me. He grabbed my hand lightly and said it would only take a second. At that point, I heard my mom shouting to the man, demanding to know what he was doing. She had come looking for me. The man simply let me go and just stared at her. She asked him again, in which he continued to just blankly stare. He didn't say a word. My mom immediately grabbed my arm, and me, her, and Lisa walked as quietly as possible back to the entrance. We got about halfway there when I turned around and told my mother that the guy was following us. She turned around and, sure enough, he was briskly walking behind us. My mom screamed at him and asked what he wanted. He didn't reply again and simply continued power walking toward us. At that point, my mom began walking even faster to the point that she was dragging me along. The next part of the story is mostly a blur to me. I remember my mom gasping, picking me up, and sprinting full pelt with me, screaming for help. My mom told me that the man had begun running toward us and managed to grab my leg. She said that Lisa jumped on the man's back and scratched all across his face before he threw her on the ground. My mom apparently kicked the man in the groin, grabbed Lisa off the ground, and ran with me over her shoulder. I remember we slowed down shortly afterwards and stopped to catch our breath. We continued walking, but my mom and Lisa kept looking back, waiting for him to show up in the brush area. Then I remember my mom began to panic, and we started running again. The man was sprinting after us. We were nearing the area where the bikers were camping, and my mom screamed for help. 2 bikers emerged from the trees nearby, and my mom screamed, "That man tried to kidnap my son." The guy immediately turned around and bolted in the other direction. One of the bikers pursued him, but unfortunately, the guy had too much of a head start. I remember the bikers were incredibly nice, and I soon forgot about the man after one of the bikers let me sit up front on his motorbike, while my mom and Lisa went in their car parked to the side. The guy took us to the nearest town and dropped us off at the police station, where my mom filed a report. After that, he gave us all a lift back home, which was really nice. I never got to thank him at the time, as I didn't really understand the situation, but on the off chance that you're listening to this, I just want to say thank you. This happened back when I was finishing up my last year of senior high school. Picture this. Myself, along with a bunch of my idiotic mates, went on a school camping trip in the heart of the Aussie wilderness. This took place exactly 1 month before we graduated, so as you can probably imagine, all of us were completely checked out. It also didn't help that most of my mates were some of the biggest troublemakers, especially being weeks away from graduation. My school, for whatever reason, thought this would be a great idea, as we were the first class to ever have this field trip. Now, you might think Australia is all about sunshine, barbecues, and kangaroos, but let me tell you, it has a darker side too. It was a typical Aussie spring evening. The weather was warm, and there wasn't any rain in the forecast, but of course, the forecast is never right. As we were setting up camp in the evening, the skies darkened and opened up in a total downpour. We had luckily already pitched our tents, so we were able to stay dry. Once the rain let up a bit, the teachers led us to a pavilion near the parking lot. They went over the general rules for the following days, but they really emphasized not leaving the camp at any time, unless we were accompanied by a teacher. Everything they told us pretty much went in one ear and out the other, which looking back now was flat out stupid. Our curiosity got the better of us, and later that night, my mates and I decided to sneak out and explore the forest. Once the teachers were all passed out in their tents, we all met up just outside the campground with our flashlights in hand. None of us had any idea where we were going, which again, looking back now was stupid, but we were very naive and impulsive. After walking for about 10 minutes, we reached the bottom portion of a huge cliff, with large rocks and boulders surrounding the wall of the cliff. Most of us sat around and talked, while a couple of my mates continued exploring the area. Suddenly, one of them yelled out, "Come check this out." I got up right away and headed towards them. What I saw next was something I wasn't expecting. There was a small opening in the bottom of the cliff, partially covered up by long grass and brush, that led to a cave about the size of a bathroom. We each bent down and crawled in, and what I saw was nothing short of horrifying. In the corner of the cave was a pile of bones. I was taken back by the hill it formed. There had to be hundreds. Now, I'm no anthropologist, but I don't think it takes one to identify human skulls. I gagged as I stepped back out, not only scared, but disgusted as well. We all immediately headed back to camp, went in our tents, and laid there wide awake until morning. None of us wanted to tell the teachers, because we'd certainly get in trouble, so my mates and I devised a plan. On our group hike the next day, we pointed out the cliff and asked the teachers if we could explore the area. We led them to the cave, and the rest carried out itself. The teachers saw, sent us back to camp, called the cops, and made us all pack up to leave. I guess the only positive thing that came out of it was that we didn't have to go to class for the rest of the week, but it was nonetheless disturbing encountering those bones. According to what I've heard, the police confirmed that they were indeed human bones, and I don't think they've caught whoever put them there. It's deeply unsettling to know that we were out there in the middle of the night in a cave where a madman was hiding human bones, and I'm glad we never encountered the person responsible.